is the account of a bloodline that would shake history. In the ancient city of Ur, shrouded in idol worship, there lived a man named Terah, a patriarch, a man with secrets. He fathered 3 sons, Abram, the quiet dreamer with a fire in his spirit, Nahor, loyal but rooted to the old ways, and Haran, the youngest, whose life would be cut short in the very land of his birth. But what began as an ordinary family would soon unravel into a journey of faith, loss, and a divine calling that defied logic. This wasn't just a genealogy, this was destiny in disguise. Haran, the youngest son of Terah, became the father of a boy named Lot. A new life had just begun, but before his story could take root, it ended. Haran, a young father, a brother, a son, died suddenly. Not in battle, not on a journey, but in his own city, in the land of his birth, while his father Terah was still alive, a wound that would never truly heal. The family tried to carry on. Abram, quiet, intense, married Sarai, a woman of rare beauty and mystery. Nahor, the traditionalist, took Milcah as his wife, his niece, the daughter of his late brother Haran, a decision that raised few eyebrows in that time, but whispered of a family circle folding in on itself. Grief, marriage, violence. Behind closed doors, something was shifting, and though no one saw it yet, a divine disturbance was coming, one that would pull Abram from the heart of idolatry into the unknown. It all looked like a quiet family thread, but hidden behind the names were wounds, whispers, and a call that would shake the world. Milcah, the daughter of Haran, who was both her father and a father of Iscah, their family tree tangled with tradition, grief, and choices that no one dared question. Sarai, wife of Abram, was beautiful, intelligent, and barren. In a culture that measured a woman's worth by children, she carried silence like a shadow. Then, without fanfare, Terah made a move. He gathered his son Abram, his grandson Lot, the orphaned son of Haran, and Sarai, and they left Ur of the Chaldeans. Their destination, Canaan. But something happened along the way. When they reached a city called Haran, named like the son they lost, they stopped. The journey paused. The fire dimmed, and Terah died there at 205 years old. But God wasn't done. Then came the voice, a voice that didn't speak to the elders, a voice that didn't wait for comfort. It came to Abram, the quiet dreamer, with a fire in his spirit. And the words weren't a suggestion. Abram, leave. Leave your country, your people, your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. It was a command, a test, a destiny, and the reward.
I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and through you all the peoples of the earth will be blessed.
And so Abram Abram left. No map, no clarity, no backup plan, just a promise. And Lot, the orphaned nephew, went with him. A step into the unknown, a chapter that would rewrite history. He left, just like that. No map, no blueprint, no turning back. Abram, now Seth, walked away from everything he knew, with a promise in his heart, a nephew on his heels, and a woman at his side who carried a hidden ache. The group was small: Abram, Sarai, Lot, their servants, and the wealth they'd gathered in Aram. But their arrival in Canaan, it sent a ripple through the land. The Canaanites were there, watching, listening, waiting. Then came the voice again.
To your offspring I will give this land.
And so at Shechem, under the shadow of a great tree, Abram built his first altar. But this wasn't a moment of peace. It was a marker, a claim, a spiritual stake driven into enemy territory. He moved on, Bethel to the west, to the east, and again he built an altar. Again he called on the name of the Lord. But then the land turned dry, the famine hit, and so the promise-bearer fled to Egypt. That's when the story took a dangerous turn. As they approached the Egyptian border, Abram turned to Sarai, his voice low, tense. "You're beautiful, too beautiful. They'll kill me to get to you, so say you're my sister." It was a calculated lie, a desperate strategy, and it worked. Sarai was taken into Pharaoh's palace. Abram, he profited: livestock, servants, camels, gold. But Egypt and God were watching. The Lord struck Pharaoh's household with disease. The palace turned into a plague zone. Then came the confrontation. "What have you done to me?" Pharaoh's voice echoed in rage. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife?" No answer from Abram, just a glance. Guilt. Exposure. Pharaoh had him escorted out, Sarai by his side, possessions intact, a man shamed but not stripped. From Egypt, they returned to Negev, then again to Bethel, back to the altar, back to where it all began. And this time, things had changed. Abram was wealthy, and so was Lot. Too wealthy: flocks, herds, servants, tents. But the land couldn't carry both of them anymore. The next conflict wasn't coming from kings or strangers. It was coming from within. The land was full, not just with wealth, not just with livestock, but with men. The Canaanites, the Perizzites, and two families blessed beyond measure, but bursting at the seams. Tensions were rising, herds colliding, tempers flaring. But Abram, he saw it coming. So he called Lot aside. No shouting, no blame, just a quiet voice of peace.
"Let's not fight. We're family. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I'll go left."
And in that moment, Lot made a choice. He lifted his eyes and saw the plains of the Jordan, glistening like Eden itself, like Egypt. He didn't ask God. He didn't ask Abram. He took it, the whole plain. He moved east, closer to Sodom. They parted ways. Abram stayed in Canaan. Lot, he pitched his tent near Sin, because the men of Sodom weren't just wicked. They were brazen rebels against God. But the moment Lot left, God spoke. "Abram, look north, south, east, west. Every bit of it I will give to you, and your descendants will outnumber the dust of the earth." So Abram walked the land, every step a prophetic claim. He moved to the trees of Mamre near Hebron, and again he built an altar. But peace didn't last. Across the region, war broke out. 4 kings rose up: Amraphel, Arioch, Chedorlaomer, and Tidal. They swept through the land, leaving a trail of defeated nations and broken cities. The kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar tried to fight back in the valley of Siddim, but it was a trap full of tar pits. The 5 kings were crushed, and in the chaos, Lot was taken. His wealth, his family, his freedom gone. One survivor escaped, and he ran to Abram the Hebrew. No delay, no hesitation. Abram armed 3 trained men born in his household. They tracked the raiders as far as Dan. Then, under the cover of night, Abram launched an ambush. He divided his forces. He struck hard. He pursued them north of Damascus, and he won. He recovered it all: Lot, the women, the goods, the people. Abram returned, victorious but changed. The king of Sodom came out to meet him. But before anything could be said, another figure stepped forward: Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of God Most High. He brought bread, he brought wine, and he brought a blessing. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hands. It happened in the valley of Shava, King's Valley, a place where loyalty was tested, alliances were drawn, and destinies were decided. The dust hadn't yet settled from Abram's daring rescue mission. He had just defeated a confederacy of kings and recovered what was stolen, including lives. And as the victor emerged from the battlefield, 2 kings approached him, but only one brought peace: Melchizedek, king of Salem. No sword, no demand, just bread, wine, and a blessing that echoed through eternity. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. In that moment, Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. But then came the second king, the king of Sodom, a man from a city known for corruption, excess, and moral decay. His offer was chilling. Give me the people. Keep the goods for yourself. But Abram stood his ground, voice firm, oath sworn, hand raised to heaven. I have made a vow. I will not take a thread, not a sandal strap. You will never say, I made Abram rich. He took nothing except what his allies had earned. But the story didn't end there. That night, as silence wrapped the camp like a cloak, a vision came, a voice from God. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram was troubled. What can you give me? I remain childless. My heir is Eliezer of Damascus. It was more than grief. It was a cry for legacy. But the answer was written in the stars. God took him outside. Look up. Count the stars if you can. So shall your offspring be. And in that darkness, Abram believed. It wasn't just belief. It was trust in a future unseen, and heaven marked it as righteousness. But Abram still asked, O sovereign Lord, how can I know I'll possess this land? Because this wasn't just a story of faith. It was the beginning of a divine covenant sealed in blood and promise, a legacy that would outlive empires and shape the course of human history. It wasn't a request, it was a demand, straight from heaven. Bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, and with them a dove, a young pigeon. The instructions were precise, specific, almost ritualistic. To the outsider, it looked like madness, slaughtering animals in the dead of night. But to Abram, This was the language of covenants, a blood oath, signed not with ink, but with sacrifice. Each animal, cut in two, laid opposite each other, the ground soaked in silence and blood. But this wasn't just ceremony. It was preparation for something darker, something divine, something that would change history forever. The carcasses lay still, the smell of blood thick in the air. But Abram, he didn't flinch. He waited. Hours passed. The sun dipped. Then came the birds of prey, circling, screeching, hungry. They weren't just after flesh, they were after the promise. But Abram stood guard, driving them away, protecting the pieces like evidence at a crime scene. And then darkness fell, not the kind that comes with night. No, this was something deeper, heavier, a dreadful darkness, one that pressed against his chest and made the ground feel cold. And in that moment of fear, the vision came, a voice, not a man. Know this, Abram. Your descendants will be strangers in a land not their own. They will be enslaved, oppressed for 400 years. Abram's heart pounded. The promise came with pain. But I will punish the nation they serve, the voice continued, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. Then, without warning, a smoking firepot, a blazing torch, moving, gliding, between the halves of the slaughtered animals. No human hand carried them. No one spoke. It was the sealing of a pact, a covenant, not with pen and paper, but with fire, smoke, and sacrifice. Heaven had just signed a deal, and blood had made it legal. But even after the fire and the covenant, even after the promise was sealed in blood, there was silence. Time passed. Too much time. And Sarai couldn't take it anymore. She was tired of waiting, tired of watching her body age while the promise sat silent in the sky. So she made a move. Not out of faith, but fear. The Lord has kept me from having children, she confessed. She said to her Abram, sleep with my maid. Maybe I can build a family through her. The name of her maid was Hagar, an Egyptian servant. Abram agreed. No argument, no prayer, just compliance. And that one decision, it lit the match. Hagar conceived, and everything changed. She no longer looked at Sarai the same way. Her attitude shifted. Contempt crept into her eyes. Sarai felt it, the disrespect, the silent challenge. She turned to Abram, her voice heavy with hurt. May the wrong done to me be on you. I put my servant in your arms, and now that she knows she's pregnant, she looks down on me. Abram gave her the choice. Your servant is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think best. So Sarai dealt harshly with her, firmly, sternly, and Hagar, unable to endure it, did the unthinkable. She ran into the wilderness, alone, pregnant, but she wasn't forgotten, not by God. Near a spring in the desert, on the road to Shur, a presence appeared, not a mirage, an angel of the Lord. He called her by name. Hagar, where have you come from? Where are you going? Tears fell. The truth came out. And then the message. Go back. Submit. You will bear a son. Name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. A child was coming, one who would live in conflict, a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone. And in the quiet of that desert, Hagar whispered a name for God, El Roi, the God who sees me. She had seen the unseen one and lived. Years passed, the waiting, long and silent. Abram was now 99 years old. And then the Lord appeared to him. He said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you, and will greatly increase your numbers. Abram fell face down, and God spoke again. He changed his name. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. The covenant was reaffirmed, a promise of nations, of kings, and a land to possess. God also said, as for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. Abraham bowed to the ground and laughed. He said in his heart, will a son be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at 90? And he asked God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. But God said, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him. But as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will bless him too. Then came the sign of the covenant. God said, every male among you shall be circumcised. It will be the sign of the covenant between me and you. That very same day Abraham obeyed. He circumcised himself, Ishmael his son, and every male born in his household or bought with money. At 99 years old, Abraham obeyed. At 13, Ishmael was circumcised too. It was the day the covenant was sealed, not with words, but with flesh and obedience. But the story wasn't over, not even close. One day, Abraham was sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. Then he looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. He hurried from the entrance to meet them. Though he was 99 years old, he bowed low to the ground and said, if I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. He offered them food to refresh themselves. They agreed. So Abraham hurried to Sarah in the tent and said, quick, get 3 seahs of the finest flour and knead it and bake some bread. Then he ran to the herd, selected a choice tender calf, and gave it to a servant to prepare. He brought curds, milk, and the meat, and set the food before them. He stood nearby, under the tree, while they ate. Then came the question, where is your wife Sarah? They asked. There, in the tent, Abraham replied. Then one of them said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. She heard the words, and she laughed to herself. She thought, after I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid, so she denied it. I did not laugh, she said. But he said, yes, you did laugh. This wasn't just a visit. It was a divine investigation, because after the laughter, the 3 men stood up, and they looked toward Sodom. Judgment was coming. The meal was over. The dust had settled, but the mission was just beginning. The 3 men rose to leave. They turned their eyes toward Sodom, a city swollen with sin. But then the Lord paused. Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? It wasn't just a rhetorical question. It was divine transparency. Abraham wasn't just a man of faith. He was a partner in covenant. So the Lord shared his heart. The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great. Their sin is grievous. I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. The investigation was real. The judgment, imminent. The 2 other men walked toward Sodom, but Abraham stayed behind, standing before the Lord. And then it happened, the negotiation, not for gold, not for land, but for lives. Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? His voice trembled, but his tone was steady. What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? God answered, If I find 50, I will spare the whole place. But Abraham didn't stop. 45 and 40, 30, 20, 10. Each number lower, each plea bolder. A man wrestling with mercy in the face of judgment. And each time God answered, I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. Then the Lord left, and Abraham returned home. The conversation was over, but the clock still ticking. Judgment was coming, and Sodom had no idea. They arrived at twilight, 3 men, but they were more than men. They entered Sodom quietly, no announcement, no thunder. But their presence shifted the atmosphere. Lot saw them first. He didn't wait. He ran to them, urged them to stay at his house, not out of hospitality, out of fear, because he knew what lurked in the alleys once the sun disappeared. That night, as darkness settled over the city, they came. Men from every corner of Sodom, not to welcome the strangers, but to take them, their voices loud, their intentions violent. The house became a crime scene under siege. Lot, trapped in the middle, offered a twisted compromise. But before blood could spill, the visitors revealed who they truly were. The door was pulled shut. The mob struck blind. And still, they groped for the door. Darkness wasn't just around them. It was inside them. Inside the house, the warning was clear. It's over. The city's fate was sealed. But not everyone was ready to let go. Lot's sons-in-law thought it was a joke. They laughed at the warning. Even Lot hesitated, paralyzed between comfort and survival. So the angels took him by the hand, Lot, his wife, his daughters, and dragged them out, the mercy of God burning brighter than the fires about to fall. The sun began to rise. They reached the outskirts. Safety was near, but the past still called. And Lot's wife looked back, just once. In that moment, she was frozen in time, a pillar of salt, not forgotten, just unfinished. Then came the judgment. Fire, sulfur, heaven's wrath unleashed, Sodom and Gomorrah reduced to ash. Smoke rose like a funeral column, the land a wasteland of memory. Abraham watched from a distance. The man who had interceded now stood in silence. There were no 10 righteous. There was only ruin. Lot fled to the mountains, alone, wounded, survivor of a city that drowned in its own sin. But even in the cave, the story didn't end in peace. It spiraled. Daughters, desperation, deception, 2 sons born in darkness, nations that would rise from the aftermath of fire. It started with a warning. It ended in smoke. The fall of Sodom wasn't just judgment. It was a case file from heaven, a story etched in fire and remembered in silence. After the smoke of Sodom had settled, Abraham moved south. He entered Gerar, a kingdom ruled by Abimelech. But Abraham carried more than livestock and tents. He carried a fear, one that made him dangerous. He told everyone that Sarah was his sister. It wasn't the first time, but it was still a lie. Sarah, beautiful even in old age, was taken into Abimelech's house. The king believed she was available. He didn't know he was stepping into sacred territory. Then came the dream, not vague, not symbolic, a divine confrontation. You are as good as dead. That's what Abimelech heard in the silence of sleep. The woman you took is married. Abimelech didn't touch her. He hadn't gone that far. But heaven doesn't play by human rules. This wasn't adultery. This was almost adultery. And that was enough. Abimelech pleaded his innocence, and God listened. But the warning remained, return the woman or destruction comes. Morning came fast. Abimelech called his officials. The palace was silent as he laid out the evidence. A king deceived by a prophet. He summoned Abraham face to face. Why? What have you done to us? Abraham's answer, weak, familiar. I was afraid. I thought there was no fear of God here. But his fear caused harm, and his lie nearly brought judgment to an entire nation. Abimelech returned Sarah, and he didn't stop there. He gave Abraham sheep, cattle, servants, silver, a settlement to clear his name. Sarah was publicly cleared of wrongdoing, her honor restored. And then, ironically, Abraham, the man who caused the crisis, prayed for the man he deceived, and God listened. The wombs of Gerar had been closed, silently, sovereignly, but when Abraham prayed, they were opened. One man's fear, one lie, one night, almost changed a kingdom story. But justice intervened, and mercy rewrote the ending. It happened just as he said, at the exact time, in the exact way. The Lord visited Sarah, and what had once seemed laughable became reality. A child was born. Abraham named him Isaac, which means laughter. But this laugh wasn't bitter. It was joy, a miracle cradled in wrinkled arms. Sarah looked at the child, and the past faded. The waiting, the weeping, the whispers, all buried in the cry of her newborn son. The boy grew, and on the day he was weaned, a great feast was held. But not everyone at the table celebrated. Ishmael watched. He was older now, nearly a man, the son of Hagar, the firstborn but not the chosen. And something happened. The text says he mocked, laughed, sneered. It was small, but Sarah saw it. And in that moment, history turned. Get rid of that slave woman and her son. The words were sharp, final. There would be no sharing of inheritance, no divided legacy, only one heir. Abraham was torn. This was his son too, flesh of his flesh. The boy he once thought would carry the promise. But then God spoke. Do not be distressed. Listen to Sarah. Through Isaac, your offspring will be reckoned. And so, early the next morning, Abraham sent them away, Hagar, Ishmael, a mother and son, wandering the desert. Their water ran out. Their strength failed. Hagar couldn't bear to watch her son die. She placed him under a bush and walked away, sat down and wept. And then God heard. The angel spoke from heaven. Do not be afraid. Lift the boy up. Take him by the hand. I will make him into a great nation. Her eyes were opened. A well appeared. And in the middle of the wilderness, life returned. Ishmael survived. He grew up in the desert, became an archer, a man of the wild. The promise was passed to Isaac. But God did not forget the outcast, because in this divine case file, no one escapes consequence, but no one is too far for mercy. It came without warning. Take your son. The voice was clear. Your only son. The son you waited 100 years for, the one named Laughter, Isaac, whom you love. Go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering. The command, but this wasn't a man's voice. It was God's. Abraham didn't sleep. He rose early the next morning, loaded the donkey, split the wood, took 2 servants, and Isaac. He didn't tell Sarah. He didn't tell Isaac. He just walked for 3 days. 3 days of silence, 3 days of grief, buried under obedience. On the 3rd day, he saw it. Mount Moriah. He told the servants to stay behind. Then he and Isaac went on, alone. Abraham carried fire and knife. Isaac, the wood. The boy looked up. He saw everything, except the lamb. But he kept walking. They reached the place. And then the scene unfolded. Abraham built the altar, laid the wood, not symbolic. He tied up the boy, laid him on the wood, raised the knife. Then a voice, urgent, sharp, "Abraham, Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy." The blade froze in mid-air. Tears welled behind aged eyes. "Now I know you fear God." Behind him, a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. He untied his son and offered the ram instead. The place was named "The Lord Will Provide," and from that mountain echoed a second promise. "Because you have not withheld your son, I will bless you. Your descendants will be as numerous as the stars. Whoa! All nations will be blessed through you." It began like a murder plot. It ended with a substitute. No blood of Isaac spilled, but the image etched in history, a test, a near sacrifice, a shadow of something still to come. She was 127 years old. Sarah, the first matriarch, the woman who laughed and later nursed a miracle. Now, she was gone. Abraham mourned. He wept over her body in Kiriath Arba, also known as Hebron. But this wasn't just heartbreak. It was history, because Sarah's death forced Abraham to confront something bigger. He had no land. He was living in Canaan, promised land, but he owned nothing. Not a tent peg, not a plot, not even a place to bury his wife. So Abraham rose, tears still fresh, and he entered the gate of the Hittites. To negotiate, he didn't demand, he asked, "Let me buy property for a burial site." The Hittites respected him. They called him a mighty prince among us. They offered a tomb for free, but Abraham wasn't interested in favors. He wanted something official, documented, sealed. He asked for the cave of Machpelah, owned by Ephron. The man was present. He played it coy. "Take it, I give it to you." But Abraham insisted, "Name the price." Ephron did. 400 shekels of silver, an amount fit for a royal estate. And without flinching, Abraham paid it. On record, in front of witnesses. Not just a grave, a claim. There, in the cave of Machpelah, Abraham buried Sarah. It wasn't just the end of a life. It was the first permanent foothold in the promised land, not conquered, not stolen, but bought at full price. Love, marked by land, and legacy, carved in stone. The years rolled on. The man who once wandered deserts now watched his son, Isaac, walk in the covenant. But Abraham wasn't finished. After Sarah's death, he remarried. Keturah, another chapter, another lineage. Sons were born, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. But these were not the heirs. Abraham gave them gifts and then sent them away, far east, away from Isaac, because the promise didn't split. It followed a single thread. Then came the final days. Abraham, the father of nations, now an old man. 175 years. A life full of visions, altars, battles, blessings, and tests that shook the heavens. And then he breathed his last. He died full of years and was gathered to his people. But in death, something rare happened. Ishmael returned, the son once cast out, and Isaac, the son of the promise, together, side by side. They buried their father in the cave of Machpelah next to Sarah, the same cave he bought with silver, the only piece of Canaan he ever owned. The desert wind carried the dust of a patriarch. His story finished on earth, but his name still echoes in every corner of history. Abraham, friend of God, father of faith. And in the records of heaven, his file remains closed, but never forgotten. Subscribe to this channel for more raw cinematic Bible stories told like you've never heard them before. Drop a comment. What part of Abraham's journey shook you the most? Would you have passed the test on Mount Moriah? Like, share, and help spread the message. Let's show the world the Bible is not boring. It's real. It's raw. It's alive. And if you made it to the end of this video, type "I choose faith" in the comments so we know you're one of the bold ones. Abraham is gone, but the choice he made to believe even when it hurt, that choice is still alive. And now, it's yours. Thanks for watching.